Science believed it was making contact with true reality when it stated as the first step of its method, observe. Science is a staggeringly simplistic subject. It literally believes that you can see what reality is. You can't. If you can't observe what reality is, i.e., the mere fact of observation does not explain reality to you, why should your system be based on observation? You can literally think your way to what reality is, because reality is thought. Our senses show us thought as appearance, but they make us believe that thought is something else, that it's non-thought, namely matter, observable stuff. When you understand that thought can have an appearance, everything falls into place. You can think your way beyond the appearance of thought to what thought is in itself, noumenal thought. This is the step that Kant could never take. He believed that thought imposed a structure on a world of non-thought. That's an impossible Cartesian dualism of thought and non-thought. Thought can only know thought. It can only interact with thought. This is a thought monism. The world in itself is simply pure thought with no appearance, while the world of thought as appearance is just the world presented via the sensory framing dimensions of space and time, which are themselves just properties of thought, concerning the phase relations of sinusoidal waves. Scientists, observers rather than thinkers, cannot work out what reality is. They will never succeed. Only thinking can lead you to what thought is, to what reality is. Because reality is thought. Why wouldn't reality be thought? Why would it be matter? Thought is infinitely protean. It's the most universal thing you can get. Simple universals are the building blocks of everything else. When you combine universals, thus producing phase, you get space, time, matter, temperature, entropy, gravity, and so on. It's literally all in the math, in the mathematical properties of sinusoidal waves, which are basis waves and basis thoughts. Ontological mathematics is the answer to everything, exactly because it identifies sinusoids with basis thoughts, with which it can explain all of science. Every scientific particular can be reduced to mathematical universals. Deep down, every scientist knows this, but they cannot bear to contemplate that mathematics, thinking, is reality, while science, sensing, is not. Sensory empiricists, sensing types, cannot endure the truth that this is a thinking reality and that thinking types and intellectual intuitives are best suited to understanding it, and they don't need to bother with any sensory experiments. It's not about the Game of Thrones, it's about the game of universals versus particulars, thinking versus sensing. Which side are you on? Who shall wear the crown? The sensor or the thinker? Do you even need to think about that? Science is all about sensory particulars. Physics concerns the particular alone. Metaphysics is all about universals alone. Why do scientists hate metaphysics? It's because they regard it as unreal, abstract nonsense. In fact, it's metaphysics that stands behind physics and explains it. Only universals can explain particulars. Scientists have never grasped this. They reject any suggestion that anything stands behind the world of particulars to serve as its explanation. They believe that particulars randomly magic themselves into existence out of nothing at all so that they can avoid acknowledging a more fundamental reality of metaphysicals which can never be reached by science's experimental method because they are not observable, sensory objects but are instead intellectual objects accessed by thinking, reason and logic. It is unacceptable to science that there should be anything other than sensory particulars, i.e., observables. Scientists loathe the idea that there is an intelligible reality, a reality of universals, of ontological concepts of entities that can be reached by thinking alone and will never be accessible to sensory observation. Such an idea wrecks their entire paradigm and method. The supreme metaphysical subject dealing with universals is mathematics, the subject which gives physics all of its power, but whose reality is denied by practically 100% of physicists. Physicists are particularists, and anti-universalists. That's their doom. They look for an answer to everything, which must of course be the ultimate universal in order to explain everything in the universe, and yet they deny the reality of universals. Work that one out. What they want is a world of particulars, which has an unreal mathematical equation to unite all of these particulars. That is of course logically impossible. Unreal things don't exist, so can't be referenced in any explanation of reality. What no physicist has ever understood is that sensory particulars aren't one thing and universals another thing, whose reality can be dismissed, even if they are necessary to explain particulars. Rather, universals are built into every particular, which is exactly why any particular can interact with any other particular in any circumstances. The universal laws necessary for the interaction are always present. In ontological mathematics, universals, sinusoids, are the ultimate reality, and 100% of particulars are made from sinusoids, meaning that universals are embedded in everything and are everything, and their universal laws are therefore encoded in everything, allowing everything to interact flawlessly in any situation. Absolutely nothing happens randomly or probabilistically. It's all causal and deterministic, reflecting the laws that apply to sinusoidal waves and their interactions. Imagine a different world, a scientific world, which consisted only of particulars, which had no connection to anything else because science denies the reality of universals. That's exactly what chaos would be, countless things with nothing in common and no means to interact. That's what science is really all about, a totally incoherent subject. But science cheats. It uses mathematics, the supreme subject of universals, to make sense of science's particulars, while rejecting mathematics as a mere abstraction. The ghastliest thing about scientists is that they never think about what they are doing, and so none of it troubles them, even though all of it should be of absolute intellectual concern to them. It never is. These people are not the brightest. They are not geniuses. They are not thinkers. They are pedestrian functionaries, technicians and narrow, blinkered specialists. They totally lack intellectual curiosity. If they had any curiosity, they would seek to make science intellectually robust. Not one scientist has any interest in that. Max Tegmark is the closest it gets to a physicist with some intellectual nous, and he was told his career would be over if he tried to sustain a mathematical outlook concerning the foundations of physics. That tells you all you need to know. The division. People, especially sensing types, imagine that some things are by their nature concrete, and other things are by their nature abstract. They regard particular things as concrete and detected by the senses, while they regard universals as abstract and concerned with thinking, with reason and logic, concepts, language. They cannot comprehend that universals can be real, concrete. If scientists could accept the ontology of universals, of mathematics, they would cease to be scientists because reality would cease to be about a posteriori particulars and would instead be about a priori universals. Scientists absolutely loathe the a priori and rail against it. Kant said, "Concepts without percepts are empty, percepts without concepts are blind." Kant thought universals were abstractions, hence empty on their own, while particulars were concrete, but unintelligible. In fact, this is just a version of Cartesian substance dualism. Real and unreal things cannot go together. Concrete and abstract things cannot go together. You cannot explain the real via the unreal, or the concrete via the abstract. It's unavoidable that the intelligible is real and concrete and explains the sensible, that universals are real and explain particulars. Science rejects this because it would mean that science is inconsistent, incomplete and unintelligible and cannot make contact with true, foundational reality. Truth is beyond the sensory scientific method, but not beyond the rational and logical mathematical method. Science is a hatred of form and a love of matter. It loves content and loathes form. It loves the contained, and not the container. It's all about particulars, and dismisses universals. Yet the truth is that the universe is born of universals, and that, of course, is entirely logical. We don't live in the particular verse. The map equals thinking, the territory equals particulars. The separation of map and territory equals the separation of thinking and sensing. The fundamental problem humanity has with understanding reality is that it relies on horribly bad analogies such as the map is not the territory. The map is seen as abstract, and the territory as concrete. Scientists believe that matter is real, it's the territory, and mathematics is unreal, it's the map. The idea that the map, the universal, is real and concrete and makes, defines and controls the particulars, the territory, is inconceivable to such people. Only in the human world can you separate map and territory. In reality itself, the syntactic map and semantic territory are necessarily bound together as two sides of the same coin. They are the information carrier, map, syntax, form, and the information carried, territory, semantics, content. You should never confuse what humans do for what reality does. Ludwig Wittgenstein said, "The problems are solved, not by giving new information, but by arranging what we have long since known." Actually, it's by rearranging everything we took to be true, and often inverting it. Physicist David Bohm said, "Our brain mathematically constructs objective reality by interpreting frequencies that are ultimately from another dimension, a deeper order of existence that is beyond both space and time." This is equivalent to saying that dimensional spacetime particulars originate in the zeroth dimension of universals.